Rank 1 warrior. Ooh, sounds good, doesn't it? So, first things first, none of us are probably, myself included, going to end up a rank 1 warrior or anything, but that being said, this particular video will serve its purpose as being a solid guide and foundation for you guys heading into Season 2 as a Fury warrior. So, again, this will be specifically based on having our new 4 set, what our absolute end game and end goal will be. However, up on the top that way, yep, somewhere there'll be a nice little annotation so you can at least see how 1007 build works, and that will be what we're initially running heading into Season 2. So, if you want to check out that video, by all means, that'll be up there. Otherwise, at least, yeah, we're strictly looking at, we've got our 4-piece, what are we doing at that point once we've had that little gap of a 1 week or so while we're gearing up and obtaining our 4-piece as quickly as we can. So this is assuming you've got your 4-piece and yeah, everything that will entail with that. Let's kick it off with talents to begin with. But before we talk about the talents, obviously we need to show, we're on PTR here, as you can see, and our tier is based around Rampage, and specifically the 4-piece Rampage has its interaction with Bloodthirst, so has a stacking buff, goes up to 10 stacks, and then each stack will give you 10% increased crit and 25% increased damage. So initially you might be going, holy shit, you know, up to 10 stacks, that's 250% increased damage on Bloodthirst. Oh my god. It's amazing, and yes, that even outpaces everything else we've possibly got on offer. However, numbers have been crunched, and that's unfortunately not really the way that you're going to be able to optimize in terms of throughput. So that is basically essentially wanting us to hit 100% chance on our Bloodthirst through this tier set, and then using that to funnel into Cold Steel Hot Blood. So that being a talent, let's check out the talent system. So this will be Mythic Plus based first. Obviously we want our AoE. We require improved Whirlwind and Meat Cleaver as a part and parcel of that, given that we, you know, need to pull out of some execute based talents to get this particular sustained AoE. We may as well pull out of all of them, right? So no sudden death is picked up at all here either. We get the extra point to Cold Steel Hot Blood, but we also pick up Bloodborne as well to increase our bleeds, because essentially there's no, you know, execute phase really to at least mention at all when it comes to sustained AoE damage. So we want to squeeze out as much as we can from our AoE bleeds. So we're cleaving Bloodthirst to 5 targets. Each one of those should be critting, which we're getting Cold Steel Hot Blood on multiple targets. That then incentivizes running bleed on the class side. So we're picking up Thunderous Roar, the 2 capstone modifiers there as well. So Thunderous Words increases our bleed even more, and then Uproar means we have more opportunities to cast our Thunderous Roar. It is important to note here though that this will desync your avatar to Thunderous Roar by having 2 separate cooldown timers. That being said though, you can generally cover yourself pretty comfortable, because with Berserker's Torment, every time you do cast Recklessness, which will have vastly reduced cooldown times because of anger management, you're able to get your baby version of Avatar, which only lasts 8 seconds. So with that in mind, you should always be able to cast Thunderous Roar, at least with the Recklessness synchronization of Berserker's Torment. So you'll always have some version of Avatar available to you relatively shortly when Thunderous Roar becomes available. So keep that in mind. Everything else stock standard, right? You're just throwing in this Bloodthirst every so often. So your typical moment-to-moment gameplay, you're still running Onslaught to bridge the gaps whenever you need a particular ability. Raging Blow will be your only and primary source of your rage builder. Your rage spender is always Rampage, right? You might throw in an Execute when you happen to have a mob that's below 20% health. That'll be useful, but most of the time it's all Raging Blow, and then Onslaught whenever you need to. So with that in mind, it is important to note that your tier set capping out at 100% is what predominantly is going to be your damage source through Cold Steel Hot Blood. Make sure you're spreading them nicely, and gains value over time as you're getting to high key levels and things like that. Mobs don't die so quick. You get the idea. In terms of single target, and this covers a lot, if not the entirety of the Abyss raid, heavily single target focused. The few AoE encounters that are relevant, it's arguable whether you need sustained AoE versus burst AoE. So most of the time, this one build will carry you through pretty much all of Abyss anyway. So as you can see, most notably, we're able to pull out of the Meat Cleaver and improve Whirlwind, which means we can spec all the way back down into all our execute-based talents. Now, you might look at this and go, well, if Bloodthirst is being incentivized, perhaps Vicious Contempt could serve as our execute phase particular talent. However, it is important to note here, once again, if we're incentivized to hit Bloodthirst every sort of 15 seconds-ish, within that same time frame, you're already getting 3 executes off anyway. So as you can see, execute has a 3.5 second cooldown with my current haste levels. So for that reason, you're getting 3 executes off that all have talents that buff it, as opposed to 1 Bloodthirst. It's a no-brainer. Execute clearly wins out still when it comes to single target. And that's the only one talent change you need to make from what we're used to running from Season 1, right? You're just pulling out 1 point from Raging Armaments and popping that into Cold Steel Hot Blood. So this will be your single target going forward. Now let's talk gems, enchants, and embellishments. So to begin with, we will have a look at the actual embellishments that we're running. Typically, we always ran Lariat, and then you might have a mix of either the Frostfire Belt if you had the Diona's Ring, or Preparation Legs, for example, if you happen to be running Mythic Plus a lot. As you got to higher levels, Preparation didn't last more than 10 seconds, right? So it lost a little bit of value over time in that regard. Allied Risk Guard was good in both scenarios, so you may have a combination of either of those. All of them are going to go bye-bye. However, it is important to note that, one, it's useful to just keep at least your previous embellishment pieces in your bank, right? There's no reason to get rid of them, but especially Lariat. Lariat will lose value over time based on losing gem sockets as we go throughout replacing gear, right? But at the end of the season, again, we're obviously going to get gem sockets back over time. So then Lariat becomes potentially viable and, you know, best in slot when it comes to AoE environments, so Mythic Plus. So keep your Lariat definitely at least in the bank until such times as we're able to get above 6 gem sockets again. However, as soon as we go below gem socket for 6, we want to replace it with any old neck. The buff doesn't last long enough otherwise. And your 2 best new embellishments we're going to be running anyway are going to be 2 lots of the same thing, which are the new Shadow Flame armor patches. As it stands right now, they are double uppable, so you can 100% run 2 of them on 2 separate pieces. I have a feeling at some point that will get nerfed, so you can forcibly only run 1, and in which case we'll tackle that when that comes. But they're the 2 embellishment pieces that you'll see up on screen that we're going to be running. Now, when it comes to enchants, Mastery is always a very safe go-to. Every guide will tell you sim your character, blah, 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 blah. But in terms of a very comfortable baseline that will at least get you through the door that you're not losing too much value on in terms of the level of min-max that you could be doing, Mastery on your rings, very safe bet there. No change on the boots. The boots will be Loch's Loam. Likewise, the cloak and wrist, same running the avoidance. There's no reason. Leech ended up getting nerfed a little bit anyway, and avoidance, AoE damage reduction, always handy. You could run things like your speed on the boots. Warrior in PvE environments traditionally have never had any issue with combat mobility, so no worries there. The leg piece actually will be swapping to the Frosted Armor Kit. Reason being is because it now does the same strength gain as the Fierce Armor Kit, but it gives armor instead of health. The reason why armor has better value for us warriors is due to this lovely talent here. Armor to the teeth, you squeeze out a little bit of extra strength by the virtue of getting extra armor there, so happy days on that one. The belt now has a new enchant capable from us blacksmiths, and that is the new belt clasp. It just adds an extra bunch of stamina, so we almost make up for the health that we lost from our legs by getting it on our belt instead, so nothing too crazy there. When it comes to gems, there is a value to talk about crit. Crit as a stat is, we're going to have to touch on that separately. However, the Keen Netherite is a very stock standard go-to, likewise with the Primalist gem. Skillful Limited Diamond is the way to go that I would suggest in that regard. So beyond that, run your Skillful, run all your Keen Neltharites, sim your character as always, but there will be certain thresholds the moment you get Cold Steel Hot Blood from our 4-piece that will make crit very worth it. So the reason why is all based around the soft cap of around 30%. So the stat budget as a whole for this whole tier, I don't think will allow us to get as close as we want to 40%. There's diminishing returns to factor in, and you could run things like double up on buzzing runes, which are both crit runes on 2 different weapons, right? That it has somewhat of an argument to be made in that regard. However, for the most part, yeah, you're going to be sort of have a stat budget allocated right the way from LFR gear all the way up to Mythic gear. That'll give us comfortable ratio around the 30% mark. The reason why is, as you can imagine, if I'm 29% crit currently and I get an extra 20% from Recklessness, so that leaves me at 49% crit, and then I need 5 stacks to get to 99% crit chance on Bloodthirst, but 6 stacks to guarantee it, then there's a higher value based on the crit to push that to the 30% mark, because as soon as I hit 30% from base crit, 20% from recklessness being added in, and then the 5 stacks of my tier set makes it guaranteed 100% to get your bloodthirst off. So that has a high value for crit in that regard, right? But then the moment you hit that 30% soft cap, then you completely lose all value, because what's the point of guaranteeing 5 stacks to make it 101% or 102%? It's irrelevant at that point, right? So right the way up to 30%, you'll see crit does have better value, and there could be moments where your gems happen to reflect that. However, again, simming will obviously help determine that, but it's at least important to note the value of crit up to the soft cap around the 30% mark. Likewise, if we were ever in a situation where we were around 39% and we were close to getting to the next threshold of 40%, then that's one less stack we have to worry about from our tier set before we get to hit bloodthirst. So we'll be bloodthirsting even more often, which is again important because our CSHB, so our cold still hot blood uptime, isn't going to be anywhere near 100%. So the better we get that, then technically the better we're obviously doing. Even if it ends up to the point where for some magical reason we were ever on, 60s or 70% all the time, and we only ever needed 2 or 3 stacks to pop it off, we would be doing that, bloodthirsting literally every couple of global cooldowns to keep a really good uptime on cold still hot blood. That would be the ideal scenario, but unfortunately that's what we're running with. So that gives you an idea in terms of what the stat kind of issue is with the whole gems and everything like that. So yeah, at least you sort of understand where we're coming from there. Finally, we do need to talk about weapon enchants. So the new Shadow Flames Wreath, this will be one of the better enchants to pick up, and you'll also be grabbing the Wafting enchant to get the extra haste on proc on that one. To begin with, until Shadow Flame either gets obtainable because it's obviously from the raid, and likewise it also will be quite expensive. You want to be running Wafting in one and Sophic Devotion in the other one. However, once that's all done and dusted, once you get your hands on the Shadow Flame Wreath, then that will end up in long term at the top end of your game. Once you've gotten all close to best in slot that you could possibly get, then by all means, Shadow Flame in one hand and Wafting Devotion in the other. Next, I want to talk about a few gear pieces, a very key critical gear pieces that'll be both very important and elusively trash that seems like they might be relevant, right? So couple of do's and don'ts, I suppose, in terms of unique pieces of gear. So first and foremost, Ashkandu, the Fall of the Brotherhood, basically Ash Candy version 17 billion at this point. Who knows how many Ash Candies we've had at this point? I think it's like 5 or 7 or something. I don't know. 3 version, who knows? Either way, they keep bringing it back. It's back again. Let's go. This particular proc chance, 1, it doesn't count as an embellishment, and 2, it also is exceptionally strong. Definitely want one of these. Unfortunately, they're unique, so you won't be able to have 2 of them. You'll have only the 1. Now, in terms of your other weapon, it will be the crafted one for 447 eye level. That's the absolute max you can get, but it's just the regular weapon, not the new mace coming down the line. It would appear and be deceptively tricky to make you almost think and want this particular mace once I'm bring it up. Here we go. So the new Shattered Raising Annihilator 2-hand mace, it would be like, oh my god, let's run that. But unfortunately, again, crit and versatility, not ideal stats at all. And also the 3-minute cooldown on the on-use effect, and it takes an embellishment slot, not even worth it. Grab the pattern. They may end up buffing it later down the line. But to begin with, avoid this at all costs, definitely. While we're on the topic of avoiding stuff, especially for single target orientated stuff, our class trinket, unfortunately, absolute trash for us. In a single target environment, we literally never hit a single button that will ever proc this trinket because we don't whirlwind. And the only thing that possibly procs this trinket is a area of effect spells, as you can see, and the only one that counts as that is whirlwind. And in a single target environment, we're never whirlwinding. So unfortunately, trinkets are relevant to us in single target, and even in an AoE environment, yeah, it's still not running the best numbers for us, honestly. So this will be one of the ones that we can let go to the wayside. We have better alternative trinkets elsewhere. So with that in mind, and speaking of the alternative trinkets, Beacon and Beyond, worth at least mentioning, decent enough trinket that if you grab it, I mean, by all means, it's gonna still serve its purpose very well. Not our best in slot trinket, but definitely worth noting in terms of as you gear up and go along the pathway, this will still be quite high in terms of your value that it provides, but it's not your 2 best in slot trinkets. The most notable ones to mention in that regard will be number 1, which is the Ominous Chromatic Essence. This one comes from the Forgotten Experiments in the raid. This functions as your Whispering Icon 2.0 kind of thing. So channeling on an Oathstone, of which obviously there are 4 that are actually currently active and ready to roll, which will be the Azure one, the one in the Onaran Plains for the Emerald Oathstone, Ruby from Waking Shores, and the Bronze from the Thaldrassus. Now, these will have their unique buff, so you literally get to pick what secondary stat you actually want to be buffed up high, and most likely you're going to be running Mastery, which, if I recall, is the Azura one. Don't quote me on that. Running Mastery from the Azure one, and then just like the Whispering Incarnate icon, any other Oathstone channeled essences basically will then give you a portion of their buff as well. So it's like I said, Whispering Incarnate icon, but at least we get to pick what stats we end up grabbing rather than being determined for us by the roll. So that's really cool. That is definitely functioned as one of our trinkets of note. The second, unfortunately, it's a very rare trinket, so God knows what the drop chance on this bad boy will be. But the Screaming Black Dragon Scale, unfortunately, not only is it very rare, but literally everyone and their dog, from what I've seen in terms of DPSs, they all want it. So everyone wants this bloody thing. The proc chance on it is really, really nice. And the buff it gives you just happens to be up almost all the time. Like, it's honestly really good proc chance. So this will be on everyone's radar. Might get nerfed, might not, who knows. Definitely another trinket that you want to be running with the Essence. But another couple of ones to note from our dungeon side of things. The new Halls of Infusion does have the Iridius Fragment from the first boss. At least worth grabbing, right? Like, if you happen to get your hands on it, cool, it'll be worth using for a little bit. However, it is a poor man's version of a BFA Underrot trinket, which is the Vial of Animated Blood. So this is basically the better version of the same thing. If you can get your hands on this one will definitely carry you a long way, if not be one of the best in slot trinkets for certain scenarios for sure. So those are the certain gear pieces of note of what to avoid, as well as definite best in slot top priorities. And last but not least, we'll briefly touch on the rotation. Not much changes, honestly. We're just wearing how we layer in the Bloodthirst. There will be, most importantly, a WEAKAURA down below in the description, which will help you track your current Bloodthirst percentage of critting. So, very important. It will flash up nice when it's above 100, and it will give you a percentage of where it sits. In terms of our rotation, though, obviously we're strictly using the Raging Blow most of the time, but Onslaught where it's applicable, and Sudden Death where it's applicable in terms of our typical rage builders and our normal rotation. All rage is spent on Rampage, and then you're synchronizing your cooldowns as appropriate, right? So Avatar and Spirit Bastion, for example, will always marry up nicely there, and because of anger management, your Recklessness and Ravager will always marry up pretty nicely together. Sometimes they'll even come up in tandem with each other, so they'll all be ready to get all together, all 4. And yeah, you're just layering in your Bloodthirst every so often. So with that in mind, you will see that you open up with Onslaught still to guarantee instantly enrage you. You can pop all your cooldowns, whatever the case may be there, and make sure you stand inside your spear, and you'll see this nice little percentage here which tells us exactly how much chance I have to crit. I'm on 90% at the moment. There we go, we're above 100. It flashes up nice and pretty. You can obviously change the size of this particular WEAKAURA as well, which I'd probably recommend doing, honestly, to make it a bit better for your peripheral vision. And yeah, as you can see, you can risk it for the biscuit, right? Like, I'm on 95% at the moment. Sure, probably gonna crit. There we go, I did crit. But by all means, if you happen to risk it for the biscuit on like a 90+ percentage and you don't get the crit, oh dude, you feel so bad. So definitely well worth at least keeping that in mind, because it can be a bit of a debate, right? So yeah, that's in terms of our rotation. Exceptionally simple. Just hit all your calls using Onslaught, Execute, or Raging Blow for your builders. Dump it all on Rampage, and then yeah, whenever the pretty button flashes and tells you to do so, you hit your Bloodthirst. Nice and simple. Thanks very much for watching. If you do, again, can't stress enough, if you want to check out how our current form of Fury is running based on the Season 1 gear until you start replacing pieces, up in that top right hand corner, you'll see a video up over there. That'll help you out. Apart from that though, thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.